What's going on, guys? Noah Valdez, aka T Ferg Fades here, back at it again with episode 2 of how to fade on an elite level. Alright guys, welcome to episode 2 of how to fade on an elite level. In last week's episode, we started a foundation for the rest of the episodes to come. I gave you guys a 3-point checklist that you should be using whenever you begin to detail your fades. In last week's episode, we used pictures and we were drawing all over them and talking about why a fade is good and why some fades needed improvement. In this week's episode, we're actually going to be cutting hair and I'm going to be explaining to you guys how I use that 3-step process whenever I began to detail the fade. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump right into it. What's going on, guys? This is Editor Noah. I forgot to mention in the intro that if you haven't watched episode 1, make sure you go back and watch it because it sets the foundation for this episode. All right, let's get into it. Today we're going to be going over 3 different haircuts. We got the bald line set in for this first client, and I wanted to show you guys that I got the shape in there and it's matching the ridge, the parietal ridge of his head. And then I put in my guidelines, and I want you guys to notice something. I'm going to draw a line straight down the middle. And I want you to notice that on the left side, it's actually darker than the right side, than its counterpart. And this is equal length, okay? That's because the hair grows denser on the left side of his head. So I just wanted to point that out because we're gonna run through our fade process and our steps, but we're gonna have to go back and address the fact that his hair is darker in that area. Okay, let's keep moving forward. Here, I already done my first run through of my fade system, and now we're gonna do our 3-step checklist, our 3-point checklist. And number 1 is there any lines left over in the fade? And I want us to notice that, yes, there is a line in the fade, and I pointed out here with these yellow arrows, and it's from the half going into the 1, and that I could touch it up some more, so that's the first thing we're gonna do. And here I'm gonna go with my half guard and just read, even though I've already done this once, sometimes the hair just is too thick, it doesn't pick it up good, whatever the reason, so we're just gonna do it again. And then here we switch to my no guard open, and I wanted to point out that, notice I'm only using the corner of my blade. Here I have it circled where my right side of my blade is digging in, and then you can see that on the left side with the blue arrow, it's actually lifted up a little bit. So I'm not using my full blade here because I don't want to dig in and create any more lines or go too high with the fade. And then I'm gonna start to close up my lever, and I want you to notice that as I begin to close up my lever, I begin to angle my clipper more onto that corner of that blade, because as I close it up, we're going to a shorter length and I only want to hit specific hairs. So we start to angle the clipper more to get that effect. Now it's step 2. Is there any dark spots? And there's not any big apparent glaring dark spots left in this fade. However, the shape of this fade is a bit off. And I want you guys to notice that within this section, it's darker than its counterpart within the same bracket. And this is how I mentioned earlier that the hair in the back of his head is denser. Oftentimes, the back of our heads have denser hair than the front of our heads. I couldn't necessarily tell you why, but that's just the way it is. And when you have denser hair, what that means is there's more hairs per square inch. I want you to think of it like stippling. But what stippling is, it's drawing using dots. You're tapping one dot at a time. And when you stipple, you create more darkness by adding more stipples. And in the same way, so even though I ran through the fade system, in this section in the blue bracket is all the same length, it looks darker because there's either more hair or thicker hair. So like stippling, even though all the dots are the same size, when you add more dots, it's gonna look darker. And we're gonna begin down fading. When I detail, I usually like to down fade because I feel like I just have more control over it. And start at the top with our 2 open, which is the top of our fade, and we're gonna work our way down, starting to bring more and more guards. And right here, what I was doing is I was showing you guys an area where the hair pattern grows differently. And so here with the green arrows, you can see that all these hairs are growing downward. And then with the orange arrows, all of the hairs are growing forward. And this creates this light spot in the middle here where the hair looks lighter compared to the top and to the side. It's okay for it to look lighter than the hair on top, but the hair on the side where the green arrows are, we want to make sure we take that down. And that's part of the shape of our fade here. So let's go ahead and keep running through our detail process. And notice I'm mainly hitting that back section. I'm not going to the front very much. With our 1.5 now, and then we're gonna move into our 1. It's different, but I wanted to pause it here because I wanted to show you that look at how high I'm going up with my 1 guard. Where the black line is and above, that's where the 2 open is. But look how high I'm going with my 1 guard in this section because of how dense the hair is. I have to lighten it up to match the colors. I don't care about the length, I care about the colors of this fade, okay? I just wanted to stop and point that out. Because a lot of people, remember, they get caught up in the idea that, oh, you can't use that guard up there, it's too short or whatever it is. But especially when you're doing a high fade like this, you can really get away with lower guards in those areas because we're just trying to match color here. And now we have our half guard, and then we're gonna go to our no guard, and we're just gonna begin to detail this fade here. Lighten it up. Cool, and I just wanted you guys to see that this is the before the detailing, and then this is after we detailed. Big difference. It helps really make that fade pop out and brings it to a whole new level. And so now we're moving on to example number 2. And right away, we're going into setting in our weight line. We're gonna create the highest or the darkest color, the highest guards we're gonna be using. This is a 4 guard. And this fade, this is actually gonna be a shadow fade. We're not gonna be doing a bald fade, but I'll still refer to it as a bald line. It's easier to understand. Here I'm showing you that that's the shape of the fade right there. So I wanna match my bald line to that shape. And I wanted to show you that this is a little trick you can use to make sure that your bald line and weight line run parallel. Is you can get a comb that has measurements on it and make sure that the length between one side and another side are equal. And here I saw that the back was closer together than the front, so I'm raising the front up to create a more consistent line. Here I want to show you guys an area in the back of his head where the hair just looks darker. Okay, I couldn't tell you why. I'm gonna show you guys that, remember, the length does not matter, the color matters. I'm going over it with the half and it's not cutting anything here. So I begin to close up my lever and we're just gonna start to lower it until we match the color to the rest of his head where the half is. We took out that dark area. Even though we had to go to pretty much all the way closed, it doesn't matter. And so this is what the fade looks like when I ran through the fading process the first time around, and it could use a lot of work. Especially in this section here, he has a dip in his head. Creates this look where it looks like it's darker because the hair's clumping up there. So we're gonna start to attack that area first. So we're gonna start off by using some thinning shears because this is a really quick, simple, and effective method to get out weight lines and dark spots. Is some thinning shears because you're not taking off length, you're just cutting every other hair. And then now we move over and we're gonna begin down fading again. I had my 3 guard, now there's gonna be my 2 guard, and we're just gonna run it to a 1.5, 1, all that until I feel satisfied that this side of the fade matches the front of the fade. And you might see me move around a little bit, and that's just my eye seeing little dark spots or areas that can use some more work. And here you can see as the guards start to get lower, I begin to start using more of my corners so I don't create any new lines. So we just want to attack at little angles, getting specific hairs. We don't want to lighten too much of it. We still want to keep a gradients going upwards. So this is what the haircut looked like before the detailing, and this is what the haircut looks like after the detailing. And so this is our third example of just using some of the techniques of creating a weight line and a bald line and fading within it. And I don't do a whole lot in this third one. It was just showing more of the weight line and the bald line. So here I'm setting in the weight line with my scissor over comb, and then now I'm following it up with a 4 guard, and this is going to be a mid bald fade. And then you'll see me, I want to match that with my bald line. And I do curve it a little towards the C cup because he likes to keep the C cup. So sometimes your bald line isn't going to be exactly perfectly parallel, especially if you have like a drop fade and then they want to keep the C cup, but you want to get it as close as you can. And this is what the fade looks like with the guideline set in, and then this is what the fade looked like after I started detailing, doing the detail process. And then there's some little darkness that I like to touch up as we pretty much are finished with the fade. And you can see I have my 1.5 guard, and I'm just using my corners, attacking little dark areas that I see. But this is the fade, and this is what happens when you stick to your process and you create the bald line and the weight line, and then you use that 3-step checklist. Alright guys, so that was episode 2 of how to fade on an elite level. If you liked the video or you learned something, make sure you give it a thumbs up and subscribe so you're notified whenever I'm uploading a new video. Next week in episode 3, we're going to take all these concepts that we learned and start to apply them to different kinds of fades. We covered really basic fades like a mid-bald fade or a high bald fade, and in this episode we even covered a shadow fade. But I wanted to show you guys that these concepts work whether you're doing a bald taper, whether you're doing a burst fade, whether you're doing a low fade. These concepts will still apply. But next week in episode 3, I'm going to be covering different canvases, so no matter who sits in your chair or what hairstyle they want, you can execute a high level fade. But thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.